Sydney's faced a scorcher today with the mercury topping 40 and above in most suburbs except those right on the coast. It's given way to more storms now and the temperature has dropped by 10 degrees or more late this afternoon. So once again, the country, the energy grid and governments have been pretty lucky, mainly because the pressure hasn't been high on the national electricity grid because the heat today was only in New South Wales. With mild weather in Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia, the electricity system has coped, even though there were weather-related alerts early for the electricity market to ensure adequate generation. The point is that our electricity grid operates on a knife edge at this time of the year. Our demand can easily outstrip our reliable power supplies, mainly because we've shut down so much dispatchable coal and gas generation and replaced it with unreliable renewables. Anthony Albanese has been lucky, the whole country has been lucky, that last year and the year before we had 2 mild summers in a row, and so far this year the summer's been pretty mild too. All we need is one serious heatwave across southern Australia to expose the seriousness of our electricity crisis, our homegrown, self-made energy crisis. It got so bad in Western Australia last week on their separate grid that the Premier said blackouts were just part and parcel of the renewable electricity transition. Yeah, he dared to speak the truth, the shocking and unacceptable truth. This stuff does my head in, and I know it does for you too. We're an energy-rich country that's made itself energy poor. We have more coal and gas and uranium than we could possibly use in centuries of prosperity. We export it for all the benefits of other nations, but we're hell-bent on not using it ourselves. Just one snippet of this madness, we are one of the largest exporters of liquefied natural gas in the world, yet we're looking at importing LNG into New South Wales and Victoria because we haven't developed enough supplies for our domestic market. Go figure. Anyway, as you know, this is a serious problem. It's a serious problem, all right? It impacts on our cost of living, on inflation and on our national economic viability. Peter Dutton today said this helps explain why polls show coalition support has increased in demographics that many consider to be strengths for the Labor government.
They have made bad decisions in relation to energy policy. You can't have a renewables-only policy. And I think the reason that a lot of women are unhappy with the Prime Minister at the moment is that largely they're responsible for household budgets, for trying to make everything add up. People have a really difficult situation in their own lives at the moment. And it's not just your household budget that's tight, it's also the local farmer and the local IGA owner who's paying more and more for electricity and cold storage, and all of that's being passed on in the form of higher grocery prices. And I think that's why the Prime Minister's run out of puff.
Yeah, electricity price hikes hurt everyone, families, small businesses and major industries. And supply disruptions can be deadly in heat waves. So I don't need to tell you that fixing this is one of the greatest challenges our nation faces, which is why it's especially galling to follow the Climate and Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, on social media. Yeah, Blackout Bowen, we sometimes call him, because that's the risk he imposes on us in pursuit of his ideological green goals, playing around with his electric cars and all the rest of it. To him, it's all a game, a way for him to try to be cool, to try to win over the greens and teal types. It's quite embarrassing. Have a look at this post, tapping into the hottest 100 songs vibe in a try-hard way and naming the #1 song as Cheap Reliable Energy by Australian Wind and Solar. Now, that's about as lame a joke as you can get, sure, but it's just so idiotic and such an insult to Australians. We do not have cheap energy anymore. We do not have reliable energy anymore. And the reason we don't have them is because of the obsession of Labor and the Greens and the Teals with unreliable and heavily subsidised wind and solar power. I mean, some of us are old enough to remember this from just 3 years ago.
Reducing power prices by $275.
By $275 for households by 2025.
$275 by 2025. We stand by that.
By $275.
Last time I checked, it's already 2025. They've broken that promise with a double somersault and pike. Not only have they failed to cut prices, they've pushed them up by double the promised cut. Which is why I nearly spat out my coffee when I saw this social media post from Blackout Bowen.
Well, it's the first Coffee with a Polish for 2025 here in St Clair. Thanks to everyone who's come down. It's really important, really helps me keep in touch with community issues.
Keep in touch with the issues? This bloke wouldn't be in touch with the issues hurting working families if they reached out at the bottom of his coffee cup and grabbed him by his Down with the Locals t-shirt. No wonder Labor is tanking in the polls. Voters are doing it tough, and our electricity grid is a shambles, driven more by Labor, Greens and Teal dreams than by physics, engineering and economics. And the bloke in charge spends less time trying to get his head around the issues than he does serving up a never-ending diet of corny and bizarre social media posts.
Dutton reckons the way to get lower energy prices now is to introduce the most expensive form of energy in 2037 at best. Got it. There's two types of IPA. Indian Pale Ale, very nice, recommend it in moderation, and the Institute of Public Affairs. Now, why am I talking about the Institute of Public Affairs? Well, I have a lot to say about climate change and energy. But I do know there's a lot of these videos out there at the moment, and this one's from the Minerals Council of Australia. I understand that people who mine uranium would like to mine more uranium, and some people want to keep coal-fired power stations working longer as well, which is exactly what would happen under Peter Dutton's plan. Peter Dutton reckons there's no way to store renewable energy. He says the technology doesn't exist. Here we are, another community battery, open today, operating already, reducing emissions and bills for locals. Some people argue that we shouldn't use wind power because wind turbines kill birds. Let's have a look at the facts. Then seventh, why we need strict environmental protections is wind turbines. And of course, you know what's a huge threat to bird life? Climate change, which is why we have to keep going. So the party that forgot to order vaccines during the pandemic and couldn't deliver any car parks or railway stations thinks they're going to build nuclear power stations faster than anyone else in the world. Got it. Did you ever hear the story of the Collinsville coal-fired power station? And also, the party which now reckons they can build 7 nuclear power stations in world record time couldn't even build an old coal-fired power station. The Liberals just don't get energy. Nuclear, mate, nuclear. They're going to ban kids from social media. Can they ban politicians too? Our energy-rich nation is in a self-imposed electricity supply and affordability crisis, and that's the bloke in charge. For the sake of the country, we need an adult in charge. And just quietly, a bit of free advice for the Labor election strategists. If you want to give yourselves any chance of winning, you better get the aspiring online influencer Blackout Bowen to close his Instagram account.